do you do a top 10 worst Transformers of the year for 2017 list when really none of them were that bad at all? In fact, it was a really strong year with some fantastic and creative entries. Here's how you do it. By digging real deep, by finding which ones you enjoyed the least of the best. In other words, none of what I'm about to count down here are particularly bad figures. It's just my experience with the mold gave me certain impressions. Yours, I can almost promise you, differed at certain points, and that's cool too. This is a very personal list made up of just my own thoughts. So stick around and see what ones are on it, and maybe some of them would be on your best list. This one's going to be kind of interesting when we do the latest GotBot counts down. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, please like, comment, subscribe, share, check out Machinery of Man, the Everything Factor, and spend some time on the channel, see what it is that catches your interest. And check me out everywhere. Tell the world about me. This guy here actually does not appear on the list. It is my custom breakaway or getaway, if you will, from the Titans Return line. And here's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. The base figure was from Chrome Dome. Great figure. Really good. Excellent articulation and a fun transformation. But his base color scheme had so much white, this guy's I mean, had so much white that he was so boring. He was just uninspired, and for that reason he at least gets an honorable mention. Some people would probably throw in Power of the Prime's Starscream here, if they got him in 2017. I don't have that figure. There's just too much about it that does not sing out to my personal taste, so I'm really not going to include him on a best or worst list. Like I said, this is just my personal taste. Let's see if you and I can agree on some of these picks, and the ones that we don't, well, hey, I'd love to hear if you have experienced something different than what I have. All that being said, let's jump into number 10. Number 10, respectively, is a tie between a guy that I looked at in episode 245 and a guy that I looked at in episode 321, that being Tiro and Repugnus. These Titan Masters are, I think, the worst of the lot. This guy's a great dinosaur mode, but that's it. Everything else about him, in my opinion, stinks. I don't like his glider, flyer mode. I don't like his weapon battle mode. Same with this guy. His monster mode is great, but that's where it ends. I really think that Repugnus should have gotten a deluxe class figure. And of course, now with Power of the Primes, we really do have a very nice deluxe class Swoop, who came really close to making it on this list because it's so strong in both modes. The only reason it didn't is because the two limb modes that have been shoehorned into it just don't work very well. These guys, I love the colors, I can say that, but that's about it. Number 9. Number 9 here is none other than Titans Return Bumblebee. Now, I'm not a big fan of the character, admittedly. And it's not even that this toy is bad, because it's not. It's a pretty good looking Bumblebee. In fact, it was reused for road burn or chase, if you will, and it was all right there. The only reason that this guy makes the list at number 9 is because Bumblebee himself is a little bit fiddly. Like when you peg the arms in and then try and peg the legs in, it doesn't always work out the best. Plus, the huge kind of bicep piece here that doesn't fold, and that was the same weakness with him and with Roadburn. And though these guys are quite good, I had to have somebody in the number 9 slot, And why not throw this guy in there? If you really want to know what I think about Bumblebee, I looked at him in episode 257. I looked at Roadburn in episode 269. Let's move on to number 8. Number 8 is the Robots in Disguise Twinferno, who I looked at in episode 290. Now don't get me wrong, I really dig the orange and gray interplay here. In fact, I think the guy kind of fits in nicely with the Dinobots. I even dig the idea behind incorporating these flames, and I like that the heads, though you can't turn the wrists, they're facing up and down, so he doesn't really have to have the gorilla arms like his Titans Return counterpart. But that being said, the plastic feels a little thinner than I'd like, and the transformation requires some strength to get a couple of tabs in that I think is a bit excessive. It's a little too much for my liking. If I'm only going to choose one Twinferno, while I like the look of this guy and I think the paint is nice and the articulation is certainly effective, I even think his alt mode as a plane looks cool. Overall, I think that the conversion scheme for the Titans Return one is just a little bit better. And for that reason, though this guy I still enjoy, because he's got a couple of niggling little issues that do bug me, he grabs the number 8 spot. Let's go to number 7. Number 7 is actually a re-release that came out in the Transformers The Last Night line. This is my custom painted Age of Extinction Slash, but this exact same mold with a different color scheme came out during The Last Night. And I'm going to tell you now, this was an awful figure back then. This is still an awful figure. Nice dino mode and works well here, but the transformation is fiddly and the articulation in robot mode is absolutely deplorable. It's not a good version of Slash, and changing the paint scheme on it doesn't improve it anymore. You want a version of Slash that's really good? Then you go out and find the Legends class Power of the Primes version, because that's fantastic. This is a nice idea, but if you're planning to ever take it out of Dino mode, I think you're going to be disappointed. At least I certainly was. And for that reason, this takes the number 7 spot. By the way, I looked at this compared with the Age of Extinction version in episode 70 a long time ago, and I looked at the fantastic Power of the Primes version of Slash in episode 338 just fairly recently. Let's move down to number 6. Now number 6 for me is going to be one of those that a lot of people are going to disagree with. People actually really loved the Transformers The Last Night Voyager class Optimus Prime, and I see why. The paint looks nice on it. This is certainly an improvement over the earlier Leader class figure. That thing was atrocious. The backpack compresses nicely. The transformation is very interesting. He looks phenomenal. But, all that being said, I have one issue with this guy, and I mentioned it in episode 272, and guess what? It still bothers me now, all these months later, and it's when I take this guy and I put his leg out and I bend his knee, and that's as far as I get. That drives me nuts. I think it is unacceptable for a figure that had a higher price point, at least in my neck of the woods. It's not that he's bad, because he's not, but he's just not quite good enough for me to be able to leave him off this list. If you love him, more power to you. I understand why. I know people who love this guy, and I get it. I totally do. On the shelf, he looks fantastic. But that lack of really effective knee, I just can't get it past it. And for that reason, he takes the number 6 spot. Let's move on to number 5. The number 5 spot goes to Transformers The Last Night Barricade. Again, a lot of people would put this guy as one of their favorites, but I just can't for a couple of reasons. Again, I'm glad to have a Barricade in my collection. I felt like he deserved a spot, and I don't think that this is a bad representation of him. I like his accessories. I think they're fantastic. I like his alt mode a lot. He is missing a few paint apps here and a little bit bland, especially in his face. But the reason that he takes the number 5 spot for me, and I looked at this guy in full in episode 261, there's 2 reasons, actually 3 reasons that he takes this spot. 1, his chest does not tab in anywhere at all. 2, during the conversion, fiddling with these shoulders is a little bit of a pain. They're pretty tight and it's just not smooth and intuitive what you need to do with them. And 3, he has a pretty big backpack. It would have been nice if this section could fold up over here. That being said, you can of course pop this up and use it as a ride shield if you are so inclined. I'm just not that inclined to do so. Anyway, for those couple of imperfections, again, a strong figure. I see why some people would include him on their favorites list, but for me, I just couldn't do it, and we're going to move on to number 4. The number 4 spot takes us once again back to Transformers The Last Night, and this time it's Deluxe Class Berserker. The guy looks menacing. He looks fantastic. I love the robot mode. I really do. It looks monstrous and, you know, threatening, which truth is, for this character, that's exactly what you want. But if I turn his head to the side, it automatically pops off the ball joint. You look at it funny, it pops off the ball joint. And the conversion for this guy is an absolute panelly mess. It is not enjoyable. In theory, it works nicely. In practice, while some people absolutely love it, he's basically a shell former with a lot of panels that need to go tabbed together very specifically. It's a nuisance. It looks great when it's done, but getting there just plain isn't fun. And for that reason, I had to put Berserker, who I looked at in full in episode 260, in the number 4 slot. We're down to the top 3. And I think a couple of them are going to surprise a couple of people. The number 3 slot goes to the guy I looked at in episode 280, that being Transformers The Last Night, Steelbane. I wanted to like this guy. He looks fantastic, and he looks great when put with Dragonstorm, who appeared on my top 10 best list. But the one fault with this guy is that out of package, I literally had to take him apart and put floor polish on his shoulders, on his wings, on his hips, on just about every joint on him. He works fine now, he stands well, but he's not fun. And the alt mode looks pretty awful. He's still not perfect, but he went for a higher deluxe price point. And if you're going to, you know, do that and have a price hike, fine. But ensure that the quality is there to justify it, and the quality is not there on this guy. And apparently it's pretty widespread with him and with the exclusive version of Skeletron. Now, does that mean this guy's awful? Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. I would be baffled to know how people actually enjoy this guy because of those loose joints. I'm sure it's possible. I'm sure he has his fans. I'm just not one of them. Let's move on to number 2. Number 2 is a guy I looked at in episode 325. A guy that almost universally across the fandom is loved. And it is the Transformers Titans Return Octone. This incarnation of Octane looks phenomenal. I did some custom paint apps and I think he looks a bit better. But I have to put him in the number 2 spot. And here's why. He has a joint in right here. It's around his smokestack. Mine is absolutely gummed up with paint. It has chipped. The joint feels very mushy when you move it, and I'm just waiting for it to break. I voiced that complaint when I'd done the initial review and got quite a backlash for it. Because a lot of people haven't experienced that. And that's wonderful, because I like the mold. I've experienced it for Prime and Laser Prime, and it worked great for those guys, so I expected it to be fantastic here. Had they used, I think, molded gray plastic here, instead of this paint that was glopped on, at least on mine, I think it would have been way better. I've looked in several packages of this guy. Sometimes his arms are well down by his side, sometimes they're not. Because here's the other problem with that glopped on paint. The tabs that are supposed to press in plain mode and in this mode don't really do it very well at all. I thought, after the backlash I got, that maybe, just maybe, mine was a complete exception to the rule and I just had a bad copy. But I have learned of at least 3 people since then who had to return theirs to the store because this entire arm section at that hinge for the smokestack broke off because it was all gummed up with paint. So it's not just me, and I feel sorry for those people. If you've had a better experience with this mold, man, I envy you because you are lucky. Not all of us did. While I would see how a lot of people will put this guy quite high on their best of list, because of my own unique personal experience, I just couldn't do it, and he takes the number 2 spot. Let's move on to number 1. And number 1 on the worst of 2017 list goes to a Power of the Primes figure, and it kind of breaks my heart to do it, but the Leader Class Evolution Rodimus Prime is pretty awful. At least if you look at it the way he's supposed to be, stock. The big robot has weird shoulders. There are certain articulation limits in the hips and legs. These arm sections, putting them in the trailer here is a pain. Taking them off is a pain. Putting them on and taking them off the shoulders is a bit of a nuisance, at least on mine, because the tolerances aren't great. I have seen a conversion of the mold where all the tolerances were perfect, and it did seem smooth. However, mine isn't like that, and a lot of other people's is not like that. He looks excellent in this mode, and I think that the front cab section here makes a respectable, pretty much Voyager size Rodimus, or, you know, Hot Rod, because by rights it's supposed to be Hot Rod, but I think it still can stand in for a G1 Rodimus pretty respectably. Except the shoulders also got limitations, and the legs got limitations going forward. Now, you know, to be perfectly honest, I improved the leg articulation by doing some cutting, and I actually kind of broke the guy. But he still holds together well, and I can still use him no problem at all. Overall, I wanted to really like this guy, but I can't. There's too many problems with him. And here's the thing, it's not even that I really dislike him, even though he's in the number 1 for the worst toys. Through having conversations, since putting up the review of this guy, and I looked at him in full in episode 348, here's what has occurred to me and dawned on me. The ideas are great. The engineering is creative. I respect all of the planning that went into him. But this feels like a test shot. It feels like a test shot that was put out into production before they had everything tweaked to make him as good as it could be. If you love the guy, more power to you. But for me, because I don't like the size class, because I think that the combined mode looks terrible, because I don't really like the yellow matrix, and because of the articulation limitations and a conversion scheme that requires a lot of tabbing in that can be very fiddly, especially if you're giving this to kids. I think that a lot of them are going to struggle to get this front piece onto this back piece. For collectors, it's probably a respectable stand-in. For me, like I said in his review, he was about a 5. I'll give him an 8 because I can find a use for him. And here we are at the end of this one. And again, a lot of these are debatable. I get it because some people have had some fantastic experiences with some of these molds. You know, some people love Breakaway, and Optimus, and Octone, and Rodimus Prime. I get it, but for my experiences, they just weren't that great. Not compared to the stellar guys that we did have come out that I actually really enjoyed top to bottom. Like I said, it's not that any of these are particularly bad, it's just they're the 10 worst of a year that was really full of the absolute best. Let me know who I included on the list that you would also have on yours, and who I included that you would not have on yours. Everybody's tastes are different, everybody's experiences with these figures is different, and I always like being able to talk to you guys about it and, you know, exchange our ideas on the franchise that we all know and love. Anyway, onward and upward through 2018. Let's hope that it is another excellent one. And I guess that's all that there is to say here. So I will thank you very kindly for giving me some of your valuable time. And I very much look forward to the next time that you and I get together for another visit right here inside the videos.